The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration selected Fort Collins based on its flood resiliency efforts and success following the 2013 flood. The resulting videos highlight flood awareness and our community's effective mitigation efforts, as well as lessons learned from the 1997 flood. Learn more in the following videos about Fort Collins' floodplain management program, the importance of climate data, and an example of how Woodward is building flood resilient.
That 1997 flood was life-changing for me. I saw the devastation. There were 5 people that lost their lives. We had millions of dollars in damage to homes and businesses. It took years and years to recover from that event. You can see Spring Creek. It's just a little trickle. You can jump over it on most days. But on the night of July 28th, it just kept rising and rising and rising. It was greater than a 500-year event. It was a big, devastating event for Fort Collins. The community really rallied together after the 1997 flood. And one of the key things that they were looking at was how can we prevent this from happening again in the future?
Out of this tragedy, Fort Collins began to focus on building resilience. The city implemented many powerful approaches to prevent future disasters. One of their first investments was a flood early warning system.
This gauge detects the water level in the river and then can send us that information in real time. In 2013, that flood warning system was vital.
Additional gauges throughout the city and upstream high in the watershed give emergency responders a much better chance to help residents stay safe during floods.
In some places, we're going to build storm sewers. We're going to enlarge bridges to be able to handle the capacity. Other tools are education and outreach. Things like our bus benches and our notices that we send out to residents that are in the floodplain to let them know about their flood risk. The sculpture behind me is a marker, a high water mark sign for the 1997 flood, so that we remember that this event happened. It can happen again.
Flooding doesn't have to be dangerous. During high flow events, rivers expand into their floodplains, allowing water to spread out and slow down. Along its largest river, Fort Collins has set aside 2/3 of the 100-year floodplain as parks and natural areas. Accommodating river flow within floodplains is a smart adaptation strategy. Detention areas far from the larger rivers and creeks allow people to experience wildlife when conditions are dry, while also protecting lives and property during flash floods. Though they can be controversial, regulations can be very effective. The city requires floatable materials to be secured, and they prohibit high-risk building in floodplains along the Poudre River.
The great news is in 2013, for our flood on the Poudre River, we saw very little material floating downstream. We came through the 2013 flood with no structural damage to buildings. That's a phenomenal accomplishment given that it was a 50-year event. It's important for us all to remember that these things from the past can help teach us about what to do for the future and how to be able to be resilient as a community so we can bounce back easier. Fortunately, our community leaders have been looking for the long term because we know that we're in an area that's at risk. We've been at this since 1980 and we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot more to do. We have a lot more areas that still are at risk, and it's going to take more time, it's going to take more money, and it takes a lot of perseverance on the part of the community and a lot of foresight to realize that these things are going to happen, they're going to continue to happen, and we have to adapt.
So often people will read and hear and learn and see about other people's experiences with climate extremes and anomalies, but until they experience it themselves, they're not so prone to taking action.
The 1997 flood was deadly. It changed Fort Collins forever. For those who study climate extremes, it was a wake-up call for better data and tools.
Looking back to 1997, we really thought we were ready. We had new technologies in place. The new Weather Service radar, NextRad, had just been deployed. We had no idea that we were having 14 inches of rain. Radar was maybe saying 3 or 4.
People had no warning for the flash flood because radar hadn't picked up the intensity of rainfall. So the city built a high-tech early warning system to prevent another tragedy in the future. And Nolan had an important realization. People could play a crucial role in building resilience.
Cell phone, you just look at the gauge and type it in and you're set. I can do that.
People really wanted to help, and we launched the following year a network of citizens with rain gauges in their yards, with internet connectivity to communicate intense rainfall as it fell and total rainfall at the end of each day.
You've picked up on climate variability.
The project has subsequently grown nationwide with literally nearly 20,000 volunteers helping us bring in rainfall data. When people are involved, they think about it. They think about the risks, they think about the hazards they're facing and how their information could be helpful. Data is the key, and the state climatologists are the vendors of the climate information, taking raw data, converting it into useful information, and communicating it at the grassroots level throughout their states. NOAA data, the Automated Surface Observing System, Cooperative Observer Network, Climate Reference Network, NOAA satellite information. This is all critical to both real-time weather prediction, but likewise to climate science. As state climatologists, main function is to monitor the climate of our state. We work closely with water managers, farmers, business operators, Dairy Queen. You'd be amazed at the businesses who are very sensitive to climate variability.
Dryer is uncertain.
Really?
I want people to pull out the historical documentation so they can see what our current experience, how that fits into a longer-term perspective. The climate is a huge natural resource. It's always going to challenge us with its variations and extremes, and it may take us in a direction that we're not totally ready to go. As state climatologists, we're going to monitor it closely. We're going to put it in historic perspective. We're going to communicate it as honestly as we can. We're not climate change advocates. We're really monitors, delivering the message of what we're seeing and how that fits with what has been observed in the past and what's projected for the future.
This is a big project for Fort Collins. Woodward's one of our primary largest employers in the community. We were looking at nearly 1 million square feet on a 100-acre site right adjacent to downtown.
New developments are an opportunity for us to be able to plan for the future, to be resilient to floods when they happen.
This innovative public-private partnership is providing something for everyone. Protecting the assets of a major business, safety during floods, and prized public access to the city's signature river.
One of the biggest challenges of this site is we were planning to develop and build in a floodplain. The entire site is within the 500-year floodplain, and I'd say nearly 2/3 of it was within the 100-year floodplain.
Where we're standing here right now, a year ago, was a golf course. And what's interesting is the ground level here was over my head.
Fundamentally, we took 31 acres, a third of the site, and really dropped that.
And all this earth that was taken out of this area has been moved up behind me to the areas where the pad sites for the buildings will be located.
As the City of Fort Collins floodplain manager, it's been a great opportunity to work with Woodward and their design team to be able to come up with a project that is going to meet our floodplain regulations, not only meet them, but exceed them.
Right here now, because we're looking downstream with all the trees.
So Woodward asked us to take this a bit further and to look at what it would take to elevate their buildings not only out of the 100-year floodplain, but out of the 500-year floodplain. to help reduce their risk as a company, constructing what is going to be their new corporate headquarters and manufacturing facility so close to this river. What we found is we were able to elevate the buildings above the 500-year floodplain and still meet the program for the site.
This more frequent inundation is really what rivers are supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to spread out and slow down and inundate areas, create wetlands, and that's what we're trying to recreate here.
The next step is the restoration of this area. So the trail will be built. We'll be bringing the topsoil back in now that we have the new grades. And then we'll be doing all these native plantings that we planned for the restoration areas. We're really restoring this to a much more natural condition and really working with the river and its physical conditions in the site and within its floodplain.
Respecting and understanding the natural power of the Poudre River was an essential step in building resilience.
I think we're at the very starting point as a nation of thinking about long-term effects of flooding. We're seeing some of those projects like the Woodward site that really has taken that risk seriously and being able to design around it and design with it.
The real story here is to step back and really look at the larger plan when you're thinking about an investment of this size and really working with the natural systems on the site.